Chapter 8. The monarchy had few laws. In a land of plenty, where kindness prevailed and deceit were mere fantasy, hardly any regulations were needed. Even Dreadwillow Ch, with its mire bramble and other assorted dangers, wasn't formally forbidden. And though Anne was not an expert on the rules that govern the land, she was fairly certain one of the laws must be, "Do not lie to royalty." But that was what Anne had done, more or less. In boasting that she had already been in the cars, Anne had omitted one key fact. She had never gone more than 32 steps into the Marsh's bleak interior. She had never passed the hook-shaped rock. She couldn't. She tried. Oh, how she tried! Time after time she failed to find what she sought, and yet she continued. The Carse held answers for her. She knew that. And, it seemed, the Carse had held answers for Princess Genii as well. But Anne's past efforts were meaningless now. She possessed the royal crest, the symbol of ultimate authority, and because the princess had proven immune to this Carse's power, surely the crest would get Anne deep into the Carse at last. That was, if she wasn't arrested. If lying to royalty wasn't against the law, certainly making demands of a royal must be. In the moment, Anne hadn't given it a second thought. The words had tumbled from her mouth without regard to possible consequences. This was how badly she wanted her father back. The threat of danger held little fear. Now she felt a deep and all-consuming guilt at having lied to her sovereign, and an absolute terror that the princess might seek revenge. For all Anne knew, Genii would return shortly with a battalion of soldiers who would arrest Anne for her boldness. She would be the first person to be thrown into prison in hundreds of years, all because she was broken, all because she couldn't control her sadness. Anne waited to be arrested, but no one came for her. The princess had left Emberfell, promising to uphold her end of the bargain, which meant Anne would have to honor hers, and when it became clear she was not in trouble for insisting that Princess Genii return Anne's father, she set to work. As the sun went down, Anne took a spade from her parents' barn and then crept to the east end of town, far from the Carse. She entered the woods where 2 oak trees bowed in the middle, forming an arch. From the arch she counted 50 steps, dead ahead. At the stream that interrupted her path, she turned north and counted another 50 steps. She paused only to glance quickly over her shoulder. A shadow, following in her footsteps, darted behind a tree. She continued on, her 50th step bringing her to 3 saplings that formed a triangle. Lighting a lantern against the encroaching night, she then stood in the center of the triangle and started digging. When the spade stopped with a thunk, she knelt and pawed at the soft dirt with her hands. She brushed the dirt away to reveal a rectangular wooden box. Opening the lid, Anne removed an hourglass as long as her forearm. Set in a silver frame, the hourglass's bulbs were perfectly shaped with completely flawless. Golden flakes, more like glitter than sand, filled the bottom bulb. On the side of the hourglass, as if etched with early morning frost, was a set of wavy lines that curved around another. Up close they looked like nothing more than lines, but on taking a step back she saw clearly this was a rose in bloom, Anne's mother's trademark. Despite having just been in the cold ground, the hourglass felt warm in Anne's hand. It felt like it belonged there. It made her hand feel whole again. "What are you doing?" Anne pretended to jump at the question. She turned. Laius peered curiously at her from the shadows. "You followed me," she said. She did her best to sound surprised, but she'd known all along he was there. Laius had made little effort to hide. Of course, Anne had made no effort to throw him off her trail. She led him here on purpose, but he could never know that. The boy nodded and knelt next to Anne. He couldn't take his eyes off the hourglass. Anne handed the timekeeper to him. Laius ran his palm against the smooth glass, marveling all the while. Anne couldn't help but smile. This was what he'd been working with her to achieve. She knew he'd never seen one so perfect before. "It's beautiful," Laius said. "Why is it buried in the woods?" Anne studied his face. She had known Laius all her life. His hands, big for a boy his age, were clumsy, but what he lacked in grace he made up in loyalty. Anne needed someone loyal. She knew she couldn't perform the princess's task alone. The trick would be getting Laius to help without betraying Genia's trust. I was thinking, Anne said, that maybe you're having trouble blowing an hourglass because you don't have one to look at for an example. Maybe the next time we're in the forge you could look at this one. Laius's eyes lit up, as if Anne had handed him the final piece of a puzzle he'd been trying to solve for ages. But why did you bury it? Anne considered this. She considered lying, but her late-night talk with the princess had made her bolder. Laius, she said, do you remember my mother? The boy smiled, but his brow furrowed in confusion. She could see that he did remember Mother, but just like everyone else, the overwhelming happiness rendered such memories meaningless. It was as if he knew what she meant if she said cup or towel, but couldn't summon the words to describe them. She taught me how to blow glass, Anne continued. She made this herself. It was the first time she'd ever gotten an hourglass right. She loved it more than any other glass she blew. She always told me she'd give it to me once I turned 18. Anne wasn't even sure Laius was listening. His eyes had become glassy, his gaze unfixed. It was the look everyone in Emberfell gave when Anne talked about her mother, or when they got too close to the Carse. But where any adult with that look on his face would have excused himself and walked away by now, Laius remained in the hourglass's thrall, which meant Anne had a chance. At times, being the only person in all the land capable of trickery came in handy. Once my mother was gone, Anne pressed on, I didn't think my father would want to remember her. I woke up one day. It was as if she'd never been there. He removed everything that ever belonged to her from the house. She pressed her fingers against the glass and swallowed. Except this. I had borrowed it from Mother. It was under my bed when Father collected her belongings. He didn't know I had it, and I couldn't risk him taking it as well, so I hid it here. Anne watched Laius carefully. His dim expression fluttered between a smile and a look of total bewilderment. How would he react to all this? Would he tell Mrs. Grandwin about the hourglass? Would someone come to take it from her, deciding her mother was best forgotten by all? Anne took Laius's hands and helped him turn the hourglass upside down. The golden sand inside the top bulb slowly trickled down to the bottom. The grains twinkled, catching bits of firelight as they fell. Laius gasped. Anne knew what he was feeling. The hourglass's beauty often took her own breath away. She loved making hourglasses, my mother, Anne said. She said, you always know where you stand with them. She thought they were the only true fair thing in the world. Why? We all come from different backgrounds, farmers, millers, blacksmiths, tailors, but we all get the same amount of time each day to do as we please. See here? She pointed to the falling sand. I've just given us each an hour. There's so much we could do before the last grain tumbles down. It all depends on the choices we make. Anne's eyes flitted across the boy's face, searching for signs of understanding. We should go back to town, Leah said, reaching for her hand. My mother used to go into the Carse too, Anne said, desperate to stop him. It worked. The boy froze and looked at his feet. Something happened to her, something no one knows about. I need to find out what that was, and I'm sure the answer lies in the Carse. It's why I go there. There, she'd done it. Telling this truth felt freeing, and she hadn't mentioned she'd been sent under royal order. Janiah's secret was safe. Laius, I need your help. Your help. For the first time Laius met her eyes. He was not the sort of boy people asked for help. Maybe my mother can help you, he said softly. Anne shook her head. No, it has to be you. You're the only one I trust. You do? I trusted you enough to show you my mother's hourglass, didn't I? You know it makes me happy, and you know I couldn't be happy if someone took it away from me. For a moment, Anne worried she'd gone too far. There were times she forgot that not only was the sadness she felt unique, but often others couldn't even understand the idea of not being happy. It was like asking Laius to imagine a color he'd never seen. But if Laius didn't understand, he didn't show it. How can I help? Tomorrow evening, Anne said, after everyone's gone to sleep, I'm going into the Carse, and I need your help, Laius. I want you to come with me. The boy's jaw dropped. No, I can't. You don't have to go in, Anne said quickly. Just wait at the entrance of the Carse. Once I cross the border, give the hourglass a single turn. I don't want to spend any more than an hour in there. If I'm not back by the time the sands run out, you are to get word to Princess Janiah. The princess? Anyone can request an audience with the royal family. It's the law. Just go to the gates and ask for her help. You can say I sent you." Laius nodded obediently. "Tell the princess." Worms made of doubt wriggled inside of Anne. She hadn't betrayed the princess. Not really. Janai had insisted that no one else must know about their agreement, and Anne hadn't told Laius about it. But the princess hadn't felt the way the curse could creep into your heart. Anne felt safer knowing someone other than Janai knew where she'd gone. She wished she felt as sure as the princess would be able to help if something went wrong. Even so, she smiled and patted her brother's shoulder. "The princess will know what to do." And that's the end of chapter 8.